Noelle can sweep your enemies to death, and today I'll be telling you how to build her best. Let's get into it. Noelle has some pretty strong artifact picks. For example, 4-piece mayonnaise hunter. The 2-piece set effect's pretty neat, since it's the only set in the game which can provide a 15% charged attack and normal's bonus. The 4-piece is also an insane 36% crit rate stat stick. Noelle's hard to balance stats on. You want a bunch of crit value, but also a ton of ER. With this new set, building her is easier than ever. You can easily get to 80% crit rate now. But still, this set could easily be bad because Noelle's shield prevents her from taking damage. This already halves her ability to stack it, as this set needs her HP to go up or down. And if she's at full HP, you will be completely scammed by this set. You either need enemies that can clap Noelle through her shields, or you can have Farina in her team. With Farina, this set becomes Noelle's best in slot. The best thing about Ito's release was all the cool stuff he brought for Noelle. One of these things is the Husk of Opulent Dreams. It was Noelle's best in slot for some time. The stats it gives her are massive. 54% defense and 24% geo damage are no joke. The set buffs her DPS massively, but her heals and shield also get a fat increase from this. But to get it fully stacked, you have to either do geo damage or put Noelle off field and wait. If you don't apply geo damage, she will lose her stacks. In Spiral Abyss, you don't want her to sit in the first slot. That way, Noelle can build up stacks off field, unless you Serpent Spine, since those stacks are more valuable than Husk stacks. 4-piece Gladiator is a simple but effective set, giving her attack percent with the 2-piece, which is an okay stat, and the 4-piece working without any questions asked. You, ancient fossils in the audience, do some archaeology in your brains to remember 4-piece retracing bowline. It used to be her best in slot before the Husk set, but nowadays it's completely outdated. 4-piece Archaic Petra is a choice for those of you using Noelle as a heal bot only. This is a nice pick for Yelan Farina teams. But then, Noelle's personal DPS gets lowered by a chunk compared to Mayo, which Farina and Yelan don't make up for. If you're after improving Noelle's DPS, this set isn't for you. Noelle's got some simple main stats. Aim for a nice 1-to-2 ratio. 70 to 140 on a non-crit weapon is a good reference point. About that timepiece. If your Noelle is below C6 and has low burst levels, you want to go with attack percent for damage. But you can still make an argument to build defense instead of attack percent since it makes her super tanky. And you want to be able to face tank a boss with her. Also, her team heals only scale with defense. Plus, defense is future-proof when you get her C6. Maybe you'll actually get lucky for once. As for her substat priority, it goes a little something like this. Now, what about that 60 cost burst? Cheap, right? Well, her ER is very important. Without ER, she can't burst off cooldown, and her whole kit hinges on her burst. Her skill also doesn't produce particles. In double Geo, I would recommend 160% to 180% DR, and in triple Geo, 140% to 160% DR. Here's a sheet ranking all of Noelle's artifact options. Now, what tools does our maid need to do her job best? If you're willing to steal Ito's weapon for Noelle, or even crazier, pull this thing for Noelle, then you, my liege, are one hell of a dedicated person. Almost needless to say that this weapon is still her best in slot, giving her so many raw stats. But it isn't that ahead of Serpent Spine. Serpent Spine is, with ease, her next best option. At R5, you're close enough to Stone Thresher that you don't need an upgrade anymore. You're now within 95% of its power at full stacks. Yet, if you take damage, which you will once Noelle's shield is down or gets busted, you will lose stacks. It is also a bit annoying that you need to wait for the stacks in Spiral Abyss before you start a round, but this is just a nitpick. It's a great weapon nonetheless. Nice. White Blind is still, after all these years, her #1 free-to-play option. At R5 and fully stacked, it comes within 82% of Stone Thresher's power level, which is decent. So you're definitely not forced to shell out money to build a decent Noelle. But since there is no crit stat on the weapon, it's way more demanding to get good crit value on your Noelle. Most 5-star claymores besides Red Horn are dog water for Noelle, and are at best stat sticks. Weapons like the Unforged or Wolf's Gravestone are only okay for a low-con Noelle, but at C6, these weapons get demolished by even a 4-star White Blind. Use White Blind and give the 5 stars to characters who can actually do something with them. And while you can put a Favonius Greatsword or a Skyward Pride to combat her energy thirst issues, I need to ask you, why? Okay, there is an actual case for them. If you run Noelle as a solo Geo unit, it makes sense. Solo, her energy demands can easily go to 190% ER. Of course, this means that she will deal 0 damage, but it can be optimal in some teams, like her most optimal team, where she's a Farina driver. Here's a sheet which ranks Noelle's best weapon options. Hey, before we move on, if you're enjoying the video, why not consider liking and subscribing? Maybe even leaving a cool comment down below. If you do, Noelle will come to your house and do all of it. Whatever it is. But don't ask her what it is. Now let's have a look at Noelle's best partners in crime. Ah yes, Cutie Farina, one of Noelle's biggest buffs. Farina has become one of Noelle's best partners to use. Noelle herself isn't a bad driver for Farina either. Noelle can enjoy a huge damage buff since she can easily drive up Farina's fanfare stacks. Farina drains the team HP, and Noelle heals the entire team. This is perfect! Plus, she allows Noelle to use the Mayonnaise Hunter set. This makes building Noelle very simple. She's usable as a Noelle flex pick. Her buffs are team-wide, so any other DPS besides Noelle gets a benefit too. Or you can use Noelle as a solo Geo driver for Farina teams. A tailor-made team for Noelle will deal similar damage, rather than a team built for Farina. But Farina teams usually have way more flexible units, like Yelan, Kazjire, and Xingqiu. Let's start off with solo Geo for Farina. There is a myriad of partners that work with Noelle and Farina. Since Noelle takes over the role of the group healer and driver, you can stuff the other slots of DPS or buffers. The best team, including Noelle, is in fact Farina, Yelan, Kazjire, and the maid herself. You can replace Kazjire with Xingqiu too. Other duos are also possible, like Fischl and Yaimiko, or Fischl and Beidou, to mention a few. Now, for double or triple Geo, you can go either Goro or Yunjin for the second slot in the team. Both are crazy good buffers for her. If you want to run triple Geo, you want to use Goro over Yunjin. The doggo is better here since he can buff many Geo DPSs, while Yunjin can only buff the on-field character. You also want to use Albedo, and if you want to demolish for real, you throw in Farina as the 4th member. She is now by far the best in slot here. This team is the most powerful Noelle team you can have. Both Albedo with his skill and Noelle do snapshot Goro's buffs, and Farina's buff has a high uptime too, of 18 seconds. This makes that team incredibly reliable, and the damage holds up for the entire rotation. Without Albedo, you would have to cope with Geo Traveler or Zhongli, who both don't do that much damage. You can also run double buffs with Goro and Yunjin. This gives Noelle her biggest personal numbers with her attacks. It isn't her strongest team, but it is nice for the flex. Make sure to use Goro first before Yunjin. Noelle snapshots the dog's buffs, but not Yunjin's quota buff. And if you don't have Farina, you can fill in with Fischl, Zhongli, or Geo Traveler for the 4th member. But if you use Fischl, make sure to slot her in second before Noelle, so you have enough uptime on alls to catch his particles with her. And with a C6 Fischl, you definitely want her second. In double Geo, you're better off with Yunjin. She only has the downside that she has a quota on her normal attack that gets burned in AoE faster. Plus, you need more investment on her. But she is very solid. In duo Geo, you can fill the remaining slots to address your challenge with another element. Fischl Beidou for Electro, Yelan and Farina for Hydro, or Ben and Xiangling for Pyro. The Yelan-Farina combo I want to single out here since it has the most synergy with the Geo core. Farina buffs Yelan and Noelle, and Yelan buffs Noelle too, and I have already discussed how Noelle is a great driver for Farina. This team has very good AoE and excellent single target damage. You could also put Farina and Fischl there and have the cuter crazy person next to the inferior one. Nice, now you've built your maid. Now let's see how her kit's made. Noelle's normals are a 4-hit combo. The The last one hits the hardest, but also makes her sword stuck in the ground for a short while rooting her in place. You can cancel that rooting part when you hit dash, right after when the 4th hit lands. Now, why is that important? That's because her normals make up a vast majority of her damage, but not without the burst. I'll get to that in a second. Her skill is a very sturdy shield that scales with Noelle's defense, but it doesn't only protect her. It gives Noelle a chance to heal the entire team whenever she hits enemies, and the healing also scales with her defense. Plus, it does a considerable amount of damage. Defense is not only a scaling attribute for Noelle's shield, it makes her shield take less damage. That is because shields are an extension of your character's HP. The more defense, the less damage they take. A 2000 death Noelle will tank the same amount of damage, like a unit with a 57k HP Zhongli shield who only has 800 defense. But does that mean her shield is now as good as Zhongli's? Heck no. On every other member than herself, the shield is substantially weaker, plus it only has 50% uptime and 67% on herself. Simply, the point of her shield is not to defend others, it's to protect Noelle from interruption during her damage phase. She's a main DPS, so the shield serves only herself. With that, she can face tank the biggest bosses with ease. The damage her teammates take when her shield's down, she makes up by healing them in her next DPS phase. One major downside of the character is that her skill doesn't produce any energy particles. This gets alleviated by having duo or triple geo, so you don't have to sacrifice too much damage for ER. Unless you run solo Geo Farina, then better get that Favonius Claymore. Her burst is what makes Noelle Noelle. It turns her Claymore into a massive golden blade. The burst has only 2 damaging hits at the beginning that is considered burst damage. The rest of her damage comes from all her normal attacks, and her burst's main task is to convert her damage to Geo and boost its DPS output to the sky. It converts a certain percentage of Noelle's defense into attack. That's how you see screenshots with 6000 attack on a Noelle. Plus, any buffs that make a clear change to her stats get snapshotted as well, like Geo damage bonus and defense or attack buffs. They stay up for the entire burst duration regardless if the original buff ran out, so you don't need to worry about Goro's burst running out. But Yunjin is different since her quota buff is not a visible stat change. Both defense and attack are good stats on her, but building defense is more effective at a certain threshold than building attack, especially with her C6. The burst also extends the range of her attacks by a significant amount, which is nice. Another great perk is that you can switch out of Noelle during her burst and come back and it's still going, something which most DPS units don't allow, not even 5 stars like Ito, Raiden, Sino, or Dia. This is useful as it allows you to funnel energy particles into Noelle. Now for passives. Noelle's A1 creates an emergency shield that pops up whenever someone in your team falls below 30% HP, but you can only have it once per minute, and note that people can still die if they get one shot too hard and too fast for the shield to react.
Mantis, look out!
With her A4, Noelle can extend her shield duration from 12 to 16 seconds, and make sure that Noelle can be completely free of interruption during her DPS phase. As for her talent priorities, they look a little something like this. Her burst buffs her normals, so you want those normals to be strong, but level all her talents. Noelle's combos aren't very hard. The easiest you can do is N4 3 to 4 times. N means normal attack, and N4 is one string of attacks. Her N4 goes out really slow at the end since she hits the ground and is stuck for a while. It's also her most powerful attack. You can cancel that time she is stuck by hitting dash right after she gets that 4th hit in. The 4th attack though only often hits one enemy, since it comes straight down from the top, so in AoE, you want to hit only 3 times and then dash cancel. Spin to win is only good if you really need those heals quickly, makes sense in solo Geo Farina comps. Now, what of our up-and-coming knight's max potential? Let's delve into cons. Noelle's C1 is a big one since it gives a guaranteed heal on every hit when her burst is active. Definitely very important to have with Farina. Reduces stamina consumption on charge attacks and makes them stronger. Also good for a Farina healer build. Faster heals for longer. A +3 skill increase. Just makes her shield and healing stronger, not a big deal. Her C4 is awesome. It turns Noelle's shield into a mini nuke that explodes when it runs out or gets destroyed. It can easily deal 70 to 100k damage on its own to every enemy it hits. You have to be close, but it smacks super hard. C5 is a +3 talent increase. Gives some valuable stats to your burst, nothing more. C6 is where the music plays, a large boost to your burst damage by giving an extra 50% multiplier to your defense to attack conversion. If you got this, you can go 100% ham on building defense. Plus, every enemy defeated will add a second to her burst duration up to 10 more seconds. This is huge since you can keep those buffs snapshotted for longer, and get more time to generate energy for the next rotation. A game changer. At last, Noelle's gotten a well-deserved place in the meta with the release of Arena. People just don't get that she's a selfless main DPS. Her team-wide heal is only another part of her kit, which just so happens to make her thrive in the Fontanian era. She's actually the strongest 4-star dedicated DPS in the game. Think about it. How many 4-star hypercarries are good? Her investment floor is huge, and despite being on the beginner banner, she's not for newbies. But that damage ceiling of hers is impressive. A solid unit, and has gotten much better with our beloved Farina. Hopefully this guide was able to get your Noelle sweeping floor 12 clean of any dirt. Well then, this has been Juice, signing out, and I wish you all a splendid day.